excited for you to join us today. I am with Amanda Kirkland. Never Mandy, she put in her bio, which I love that because first of all, she's setting her boundaries. Second of all, I just thought it was kind of cute. So I'm really excited to talk to her today. For you that are just joining us, I'm Colleen Tatum, and this is Rising Through, where we explore the relationship between struggle and success. I have found that struggle is actually required in success. It's often something we avoid, but the fact is that you've got to go through some trials. You've got to go through some pruning stages to actually get to your true passion, your true purpose, and your true success. So that's what we talk about today. So Amanda Kirkland is a coach. She has a super long title and a lot of accolades behind her name that I'm not even going to attempt to get right. But one thing is she is an Avalon Empowerment trauma-aware transformational coach. That's a huge thing. Amanda, what in the heck is that?
Oh, now you put me on the spot. Nobody's quite asked me that question. I think just the fact that I've got some certification and training behind me in terms of, sensitivity, trauma awareness, social impact, is something that, not everybody has specific training in. People don't have to have it, but, and then just the training with Avalon has given me a lot of sort of tools that I can use with my clients. We do a lot of work with the unconscious mind, which I'm not going to get into all this on the podcast, but, yeah, anyway, it's just sort of a fancy name. I really just say I'm a personal growth coach, and I use my hard lived experience and my training to help women and a few men who are struggling with dysfunctional interpersonal relationships.
Mm-hmm. I feel like everyone has dysfunctional relationships. Maybe that's just my reality, but certainly there are some relationships that are more dysfunctional than others. But every family, every relationship, I think, has some sort of dynamic of dysfunction. But going and doing the work to get better is something that often a lot of people actually don't do. I'm realizing as I move through the world, it's kind of like when you're a kid, you thought adults had it all figured out, and then you realize that they really don't. And most adults are just, people that grew up because time passed, but they never actually gained the emotional intelligence. They never did the work to say, hey, who am I? Who do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? So is that kind of what a personal development or personal growth coach does?
I like to say I help my clients get back to, I'm going to say, who they were meant to be if all the shit hadn't happened. I look at my own journey, and a lot of what either happened or didn't happen to me growing up and then through early adulthood formed, how I played a role in certain relationships, how I reacted in certain situations. And, when my clients come to me because they're unhappy with something, or let's say there's a problem and they're struggling with, their boss and their colleagues, for example, that's just what the presenting problem is. So what we work to do is peel back the onion, which is not an original analogy by any means. And we get to the root of, where their own role in this may be coming. And we also start to understand, and I help them understand other people's behavior. And I think, the more we understand and can be compassionate about some people's behavior and walk into a situation or approach it with a different lens, that can completely change the trajectory of the way, a situation would happen. I know with a lot of what I learn now, I would walk into a boardroom meeting and run the show completely differently. In fact, I probably wouldn't run the show. That was one of the things that was probably causing me problems, that I was going in and strong arming, or, and that was because I needed to be heard and respected. But it really, when you start to peel that all back, it doesn't make any sense. It has the opposite effect.
Yeah, you were a real estate developer before in a corporate setting. And so I think you're really right. We see a lot of people that have that need for control and power, but what it really does is the opposite, right? But it takes a lot to start to realize that about ourselves, right? And I think, I mean, at least for me, I don't know. I was a business owner since very young. But what I did is I moved into some corporate settings. Maybe I would be presenting to large corporations. I was in politics at one point, and I was shocked at the level of dysfunction that I saw in those boardrooms behind closed doors. I never imagined that it was like that. I have seen people physically pull each other across the boardroom table and have an altercation.
I
And
can't say I've had that experience.
I was shocked that this is what was happening behind closed doors. That was in a political setting. So I think in those settings, the rules are off a little bit because these people are elected and they feel like the rules don't apply to them. But I have seen, in either other corporate settings too, and certainly heard, berating of people, bringing down of people, the condescending nature, the telling people, that they're worthless and that, they have an expectation of total control of their lives, which was just really shocking to me that this is how people are operating and living in this day and age, right? That people go to work in a place like that day after day after day, and then
There's some
the environment
there's
that they're living in.
fear mongering and bullying in some instances.
Yes. And so you're in this relationship where, you quite often, lots of times you feel like, or you are feeling like I have to submit to this environment because I need this paycheck. This is security for my family. I don't have other options. It was so hard for me to get this job. What would I do? Whatever that situation is, which, I believe is never true, right? There's always a way to figure out a way. But a lot of times, for whatever reason that's going on in our life, like you were saying, is that sometimes the way someone reacts to a situation is going to be different than someone else. And it might make them more predisposed to having abuse happen in the workplace. So I just want to clarify that we're not victim blaming here. We're not saying it's your fault, but there can be things that happen to you in your life that make you more predisposed to certain things than other people that you will allow because that's already your safe place. You already are used to that kind of feeling and environment, so you fall into that pattern easier. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And probably a more concise way of saying what I was trying to say. I know, in many of my work situations, when I look back at them now, and there was dysfunction, and it was mostly the leadership down, and they weren't setting, I'm going to say, rules in place for how things should happen. And, I've been criticized for, Amanda thinks it should be done this way. And there's a lot of things that I just think are sort of intrinsic in human nature, like manners, acknowledgement. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And one of the things I was doing in all situations was when I saw something that I'm going to say I didn't think was right, was trying to change it or fix it. And I just met resistance, and, I kept fighting, and I didn't realize that I was fighting with, people with godlike omnipotence egos, and or ones that, weren't strong enough to stand up and say, you know what, you're right. So instead I was the bad guy,
Yeah.
and all the other behavior was swept under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
And but when I look back at all of that, it was again me needing or wanting to be, seen or heard or acknowledged, and supported. And that was what I now realize I didn't get enough of when I was growing up, like
Yeah.
that emotional support. And somehow that all still tied into how I was, I don't want to say working in the workplace, but how I dealt with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how we were raised as a children, the things that happen to us as a kid form our reactions as an adult, right? That's why two people can experience the same thing, but they both
Completely
remember it
different.
differently because they are filtering it through their own experiences, right? And that's the thing as adults that we have to start to realize and look at what is the filter that we're using, right? Is the filter appropriate? And as you start to understand other people and the filter that they might be operating with, you're able to, I think, identify that and react to it more differently.
A
Um,
100%.
it's so true, right? And I'm a parent. I've got 3 kids, and I look at, what works with my kids is praise and recognition. Everyone has a need to feel seen, heard, recognized, and that is the best parenting method I find is praise and recognition to get the behavior that you want versus focusing on the behavior that you don't want. That's been my experience. But that doesn't suddenly stop when you turn 18. It doesn't suddenly, change for you.
No, you know, I know in the past, where I'd finished a job or it was like, I remember one time I completely, redone an entire sales office, done new model suites, put a broker lunch together. It was catered and I loved doing what I did and I was good at doing what I did. And no one had sort of borne witness to everything that gone into it. So all of a sudden it's like, boom, here it is. Amanda's like done it all. And I remember turning around and going, so like, what do you think? Are you happy with it? I'm like, yeah, I'm thrilled. Okay. And it was like, that's what you're paid to do. So, and if I was in that position, I would have been like, oh my God, wow, this is fantastic. You know what? You've hit another one out of the park again.
Yeah.
And, when you don't, I know they say you don't need to get external validation, and we can learn to, find that in ourselves. But what's the harm in giving it to other people? Like, how much energy? It must take more energy not to say something and to be all, holier than thou about that. But I mean, I've used that example so many times now. I'm like, I cannot believe that, and that could be said, well, it's sort of a corporate response. You're working for a company, and I don't know. I've always wanted to be told I did a good job. And maybe that's because I didn't get it wasn't told that enough when I was growing up. And, now I don't necessarily need to be told that.
Yeah.
But damn, if I'm not going to tell other people that they're great.
It feels great to be told you're doing a good job, right? I think that was something for me, I really discovered when I transitioned into a different business career. The business I'm working with right now, we have like a home office. So we're independent owners of our business, but our home office is so big on recognition and praise. And at first, I thought it was really bizarre. I was like, this is weird. Why are people being recognized for the most minuscule of things? But as I grew my understanding of human nature and actually even my own appreciation of being told that I've done a good job, it breeds a desire to continue to do better and to continue to strive. That's what I've learned, because I definitely would have been a leader before in my businesses where exactly that. I'm like, well, you're supposed to do a good job. Like, what do I need to baby you and tell you that you're doing this exceptional job? I wasn't great at that. That's not the environment that I grew up in. It was a very stoic environment. I don't think I ever remember my parents saying things like that to me. And yet it is a human need, I feel like. And you don't have to recognize people for nothing, but at the same
No,
time, you
no,
can
not at
always
all.
find things to praise on, right?
Well, and you just finished saying with your kids, the two things, it's praise and recognition. And here I am at 56 years old saying that's what I needed a bit of at work.
Yeah.
And, I didn't need you wouldn't make it if it wasn't, you wouldn't make it in the real world. And we've covered for you, and you weren't born with proper coping skills. And because I was reacting to things, and I know I've gone down a different tangent, but it's
No,
just like,
it's so
but
valid because
I
people
may
do
not have
that.
done those things had it been a more nurturing
Yeah, I find
environment.
what I've found is people will rally together more if they feel like they're a part of a team. A story is coming to mind out of a book I read. I think it was in the Culture Code. I could be totally wrong, but that's a great book. If no one has read it, it's actually a really good book about interpersonal relationships in the business place. And there was a chapter in there, I think, where they were talking about this company where they were a startup and they were working, and it came to the point where they didn't have enough money for payroll, and the owner was saying, hey guys, I think we need to shut down. I can't do this. I don't have money for payroll. And instead, because they had a great relationship, they all rallied and said, you know what, that's okay, we're just going to work for free for a minute. Which would never happen in a normal environment, right? But because they had done the work to build the relationships, they felt so much a part of a team that they wanted to contribute. They wanted to see it continue. They wanted to rise so much above the expectation because those relationships were fostered. So when you're coaching someone, what are kind of, if someone's in a relationship at work or having a minute where they're saying to themselves, hey, I don't think this is quite working. What are some of the first steps that you go through with someone to identify those different relationship nuances? What are the things that they're doing? What's the process look like?
Well, one of the tasks would be journaling, so that, I probably would have them give me a week's worth of interactions in the workplace. And going through and sort of analyzing that and seeing, what I could pick up on the colleague's behavior, how my client is, I'm going to say, reacting versus responding to the situation. And, once I can find some more information there about, the client themselves, because technically that's who I'm working with, although I want them to understand that the person they're working with may be difficult, or maybe at the end of the day, the person isn't difficult, but the filter through how they're seeing this person's behavior has been, I'm going to say, jaded by some of their own experiences. So, some of the work that I do, when I mentioned earlier about working with the unconscious mind, is actually digging into, finding the source of maybe some of their reactions. So it could be what their limiting beliefs are, that, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel smart enough, they don't feel good enough. And it's unlearning some of those thought patterns. They may be carrying, anger, sadness, negative emotions around. So it's a lot about sort of clearing up and unpacking some of the baggage that we may be carrying around that we don't realize we're bringing into situations. And even that being, in the first few weeks, just lightening that load, and then going back and seeing, how their behavior may be changing the behavior of the people around them. Because if their energetics are different and they're coming in a little more relaxed and not as like I was going in ready to do battle. And unfortunately, COVID happened, and then the job I was in, the project was coming to an end. So I never got a chance to actually go back and try any of this stuff. Understanding all of it now and having, understood where I may have played a small role, but also understanding, and that's the same thing with my clients, helping them to understand the dynamics in the workplace. And there's some people that they're not going to be able to change, period. And the people that they can't change, well, then we've got to do our own work
Yeah.
and figure out how to pivot in those situations, because we can't always walk away. I didn't want to walk away because I was making great money and I loved what I did and I had a lot of freedom, but I also was fighting every single day for years.
Yeah. A thought comes to mind. What you seek, you will find, right? So if you're showing up in any environment, uh, ready for a fight, you're gonna get a fight, right? It's really good advice. What you're describing sounds an awful lot like what people think counseling is. And so I would love the listeners, maybe they've never had a coach before. I find coaching is unpacking, but then also providing tools to change it. Where sometimes counseling is maybe like just unpacking indefinitely. There's no resolution. Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you would feel like coaching, the different, what would be the difference to
But
you between like coaching and counseling?
as someone that did do or went to armchair counseling for 20 some odd years, and I'm not knocking it because it got me through some really shitty times. But when I look back now, I wasn't given any tools. We didn't dig down and find things out about me. I went in every week and it was like, okay, this is what the crisis was. This is the problem. And it was, excuse me, almost like that's where I got a bit of validation that I wasn't messed up, even though I kind of was messed up because of all the stuff
Right.
going on around me. But yeah, you're right. They shouldn't have done this, or this isn't the right behavior. And I guess I got to a place where I started reading a lot of books and figuring out things on my own. And one day I just said, okay, that's it. I'm done. He's like, no, we can work towards graduating you. And I was like, no, like hard stop. And then I started doing more reading. And life was carrying on around me. And then I mentioned this project was coming to an end. I had to decide what I was going to do next, whether I stayed in real estate development or did something different. It looked like I wasn't going to be able to match the type of job and salary and autonomy that I had. So I started, doing more like, what do you do when you're trying to figure out what to do next at 50 something years old in a career? And I started writing, the list of what I was good at and what I enjoyed doing. And I decided I was going to start a personal concierge business, which led to working with a coach, which now I'll get to the answer you had. She said to me about 4 months in, how many shifts have you seen in the last 4 months compared to 20 some odd years working with a therapist? And I was like I'm speechless. The awareness I started to have and the understanding of myself and other people was unbelievable. So, I do one-on-one coaching. It could be long-term, it can be a 6-week breakthrough, but with the coaching process, it's goal oriented. There's a lot of accountability. There are, oh geez, I've gone blank on the word now.
Achievables, maybe?
No, it's goal oriented and results oriented. And, we sit down and we decide whether it's a relationship breakthrough or whether it's something to do with, work or, someone's just their habits or how they feel about themselves. And we decide what they want their outcome to be. And I mean, it could be I'm living a life I love on my terms and by my rules. And, it's setting boundaries with ourselves and learning things like that, and providing them with tools about how to reframe certain situations and how to get your mind, the cup's half full, not half empty. And that takes practice and it takes guidance. And, a coach is going to hold you accountable. And like I said, there's a word I'm thinking of. It's sort of like there's a penalty also. And that's the wrong word because it's too harsh to use. I've just gone blank on it. But we set sort of a penalty, and maybe it's if you don't get me the journals at this point in time, or you're not doing this task, what's a charity that
Right.
you want to give to, and it's like, okay, you have to give $100 to that, not $100 to me, but so there's that accountability there. And I think, as you probably know, people have to be ready to do the coaching, because you have to take a real hard look at yourself. And I even remember when I was working with my first coach, and she's like, one of the exercises is, what's your purpose? And the word purpose to me was more like religious for some reason, and I'm not a religious person. And she just kept pushing me. And I was like, I don't have a bleep in purpose. Like, and this was 3 hours, Kleenex, bawling my eyes out. I was like, I'm about to give up. Like, it was just ridiculous. And I finally was like, I just want to be happy. I want people to be happy. And that was like a pivotal moment. Like, from there, everything just started moving into this direction of what I was going to do and who I was going to work with, and that I was actually going to be a coach, not something else. I mean, I used to think, who am I to be a coach? And, no, we're not medical. I'm not a medical practitioner. I've got 35 years of lived experience, whether it's family estrangement, whether you want to call it disordered eating or an eating disorder, narcissistic abuse, for lack of a better word, family and workplace. And that's all been addressed, and worked on. And then with my training, I now have tools. And instead of it, like, I lost 25, 30 years of my life. I didn't have any tools or support to navigate this stuff. So, if I can help 20 women a year, whatever it happens to be, avoid those struggles and be able to sort of have what I say, like a normal life, like sort of your birthright. I know that's a bit
Oh, it's true. Lean into
and
it. I
perfect
mean,
world, but if I knew half of what I know now, I would have approached everything so differently. And it was not until I got into the whole coaching world, and it's all been accidental. It's all been me following the breadcrumbs. The universe left me, because there's no way I would go from senior level real estate development to solo entrepreneur, at 50 something years old, like, on my own. So I believe that, my journey and where I'm now, I like to say, from toxic to terrific. And is possible, and in a much shorter period of time. And when we change our energy, it changes the energy just around us and who we attract and whatnot. And some of the people in our lives, like you said, I think when we were talking earlier, some people are never going to do any work on themselves, but they're still going to be there. And we've got to learn, to either let water run off a duck's back, be more compassionate, or just in the back of our mind go, you know what, I feel sorry for them. They've gone through something, clearly can't change it. But and that's one of the biggest things I learned too. I wish somebody had told me that you couldn't change other people.
yeah, I feel like, oh, there's so many nuggets in there, but exactly. If we can learn to operate differently in the world, then we will get different results, right? We will be able to see people for who they are and be able to react differently, right? You can see someone that's seeking validation and not be offended by them, because you'll say, there was a gentleman this week, and he comes off very large and very abrasive, but I can see that he's really looking for validation just with little things that he says. And so it really helped me react differently to him. I didn't have to get triggered by it. I didn't have to get pissed off like I
Yeah,
maybe
and
normally would.
you can discern
I'm like, I
discernment,
just
right?
know that you're just a big old baby looking for validation in a terrible way. But that comes through doing the work and being more aware of yourself and your own triggers and the way that you're doing things. And I think, I believed before, I really did, like, coaching, what the heck is that? Everyone's a coach these days. And I had some coaches before that were really not effective. And then I found some that really were. So not every therapist is going to work for you. Not every coach is going to work for you. So being clear of what type of coach you're trying to get, things like that. But I truly believe that coaching is like the 2.0 of therapy, because when you have someone that's good, it's not only just unpacking the stuff that happened before and talking about it forever with no actual tools, which maybe there's some types of therapy out there that aren't like that. Some different modalities, but my experience in counseling was always just like talking about things ad nauseum. They would never give you any advice or tools. So you just continue living in the same mud, but never ever giving you a ladder to get out of the mud. So every time you meet them, you just talk about how muddy your life is.
I looking back, I can't believe it. I really can't.
Right?
Like every Tuesday for an hour for 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years, right? Like 25 years of trying to find a solution, trying to get better, and yet just really not getting a solution. So I truly believe that coaching is like an elevated way of approaching that solution, of saying, hey, things aren't working in my life. I want someone that is going to actually, like you said, you have to be ready for that, because the coach is going to push you. The coach is probably going to make you want to quit. The coach is probably going to make you want to cry, and you're going to get mad at your coach. That's actually good, because that's when they're pushing you to the brink, and then they pull you back, right? And they say, hey, this is what we're seeing. They're going to actually tell you the truth, but also then help you get to a better place. And I have found it really effective and such a blessing in my life to be able to have coaches that do that for me. And I think that it's a real need in our communities as people. I think it's really helpful in becoming an adult, like an actually developed, emotionally mature person. I think that it's really effective in that. So I think your journey of going through all of those things and trying to get a solution for decades put you in the exact position where you are now, where you really truly can help people, and you are helping people, and that qualifies you, right? You said, oh, I thought, who am I? But those are the things that qualify us to help other
people. I've been through and done everything that I'm asking my clients to do, and I'm on the other side of it. And
yes.
it's changed everybody that's in my life. It's changed the supports. It's brought an amazing relationship into my life. For the first time in all these years, we just bought a house and are moving. And it's no coincidence. It's no coincidence. And it's not cheap. There's a big investment there, but if our car's broken, we don't drive it around broken for 10 years. We take it to get it fixed, and we pay for it. So why not, invest in ourselves, and, live the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years in the best version of ourselves. And, I'd like to say, I'm back, I'm where I was if all the shit hadn't happened to me. But if the shit hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. Yeah. And hopefully, being able to help other people, like I said, avoid a lot of the struggles I had.
Yeah, I think you are helping a lot of people, and you're going to help a lot of people in the future. So we're so thankful that you were able to join us here. I feel like I got value out of it. I hopefully the listeners did too. If they're thinking, hey, I want to connect with Amanda, I'd love to learn more about what you do, where is the best place for someone to find you?
My website's amandakirkland.com, which is pretty simple. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Amanda Kirkland Coach.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I hope that everyone goes and follows you and connects with you. I know that you're providing value to the universe. So thank you so much for doing that. It means a lot to me to be able to connect with people that have been through stuff, but got through to the other side and are using that to help other people. I think really, honestly, that is the purpose of life. Whatever that looks like, is you just helping people that are 3 steps behind you. we are here to become better, right? We're not here to just live and pay bills and die. We're here to actually evolve. And to do that, unfortunately, we got to be in some mud sometimes. But what you don't have to do is stay in the mud. What you don't have to do is live in the mud. What you don't have to do is try and pull other people in the mud with you.
And you don't have to do it alone.
Exactly, exactly. There are people out there, there's coaches out there that can help you to get better. And I feel like that is a never ending pursuit. There is never going to be a time in my life where I never can get better. So if this resonated with you at all, please go follow Amanda Kirkland. And we are so happy that you joined us today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending some time with us. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.